The only thing I can imagine is she was yelling her daddy's name. And it goes through my head over and over and over again.
Still investigating to find out exactly why she was bound and then why she ultimately was shot.
Oh, it's just such a waste of a life. She's a kid.
Your best friend should be someone you could rely on with your life, not someone who would take your life for cash. Sadly, in the case of Cynthia Hoffman, the latter was true. Real-life monsters are out there on the internet, exposing their darkest ideas to vulnerable people and enticing violence and murder. In 2019, 21-year-old Darren Schillmiller catfished 18-year-old Denali Bramer into killing her best friend. But by the time Denali accepted Darren's evil request, she had already violated a child and sent a gruesome video to her online boyfriend. Yeah. This case has plot twists that will shock even the most seasoned true crime enthusiasts. Welcome to Crime City. Let's explore the tragic case of Cynthia Hoffman. Anchorage is Alaska's largest city, home to great cultural centers and natural splendor. This is where Cynthia Hoffman grew up. Cynthia was born in 2000. She lived with her sister and her father in a trailer park, and they were a tight-knit family. But Cynthia was born with developmental difficulties, so she relied a lot on her family, even when she was 19. In fact, at the age of 19, Cynthia was still working at a 7th grade level. But she was a kind, loyal, and hard-working person. In 2019, she was working at a restaurant and getting driving lessons. And in June of that year, Cynthia helped her family work on their friend's camper van for a bit of cash. On June 2nd, Cynthia was supposed to meet her sister to get her part of the money. That afternoon, she sent her dad Timothy a text message, confirming she was on her way to meet her sister. But a few hours later, Cynthia still hadn't made it to the meeting, and her whole family was getting worried. As soon as Timothy learned Cynthia was missing, he rang the police and explained her vulnerable situation. But even so, the police said they couldn't start a search before 24 hours had passed. This was the rule for all missing person cases. So Timothy contacted the Anchorage news stations and began looking for his daughter on his own with his motorbike. Before the police got involved in Cynthia's case, several of the family's friends and peers contacted Timothy with relevant clues. One of these people was Angela, Cynthia's school friend. She wrote Timothy a text message saying Cynthia had asked her to drop her off at Polar Bear Park. Cynthia hadn't spoken about this plan with her dad, and this worried him. Why was she hiding this from him? Even more worryingly, Angela did drop her off at Polar Bear Park, but she seemed to vanish right afterward. On the next day, the police finally took on the missing person case, and Timothy shared the text messages he'd exchanged with Angela.
In the Hoffman family, the kids check in often and on time.
In this family, you all have phones. When Dad calls, you answer. I don't care if you're in church and the holy pastor's preaching. I don't care if you're at school taking the high school diploma test. If Dad calls, you answer.
Angela had mentioned a guy in one of her text messages, something about not trusting him around Cynthia. She also wrote that she loved her best friend and wanted her to come home just as much as Timothy did.
I hope she comes home safely. She's my best friend.
But when the police ran Angela's number through the system, they were in for a surprise. There was no Angela, just an 18-year-old girl called Denali Bramer. For the detectives, this was a big red flag. Why would Denali pose as somebody else? Strangely, Denali and Cynthia truly were BFFs. According to all their selfies and posts on social media, they seemed to be doing everything together at school, and Cynthia often referred to Denali as her best friend at home too. So why would Denali hide her identity? As the police were still looking into this and searching for Cynthia, a woman named Nicole phoned them. She said that on the evening of June 2nd, the same day Cynthia disappeared, her daughter and a boy named Anthony were at her home. That's when Anthony made a shocking statement that Cynthia was dead and that he had a role to play in it. When the detectives asked Nicole what the name of her daughter was, she said Denali. It's unclear why Nicole waited a whole day to tell the police about this. On the evening of June 4th, the detectives knocked on Timothy's door. They had some bad news. Cynthia's body had been discovered on the riverbank at the Thunderbird Falls hiking trail. Her body was bound with duct tape, and she had been shot in the head.
good morning to you. Cynthia Hoffman was lured to this trail under the guise of going for a hike. One day after she was reported missing, police found her body bound with duct tape along a riverbed not too far from where we are right now.
According to the pathologist, Cynthia was already dead when Timothy reported her missing, even though he called just hours after she'd messaged him. The news of Cynthia's death sent shockwaves through the peaceful community of Anchorage. No one understood how a kind soul and innocent person like Cynthia could suffer such a fate. And to think she was especially vulnerable. What kind of person preys on vulnerable teens?
It's just such a waste of a life. I don't. She's a kid.
At first, the police didn't know what to think.
We're still investigating to find out exactly why she was bound and then why she ultimately was shot.
The only thing I can imagine is she was yelling her daddy's name. And it goes through my head over and over and over again.
As far as the police knew, no one had the motive to kill Cynthia, but they had two suspicious people they wanted to talk to, Denali and Anthony. Remember how Denali went under a fake name? So did Anthony. His real name was Caden McIntosh, and he was a 16-year-old drifter. On June 5th, Caden was arrested. On June 7th, Denali joined him at the police station, but they both refused to say a word. Within a couple of days, Denali was granted bail and was back out on the streets, but the police had kept her phone as evidence, and when they discovered her many text messages, they arrested her again. Here's where the story gets really dark. Denali had deleted a myriad of messages to and from a man called Tyler. The police recovered them, and they uncovered a nasty online relationship. Tyler lived in Indiana, but he and Denali were dating online. However, they weren't flirting or discussing romantic plans. Their topics of interest were child pornography and murder. You see, Tyler had told Denali he was a very wealthy man living in Kansas, and he liked to spend his money on watching young people get assaulted. Somehow, he convinced Denali to be the source of these videos. First, Denali sent him videos of child-explicit content. Then, he asked Denali to violate an 8-year-old. She did it, she filmed it, and she sent it to him. Then, she did the same with a 14-year-old. Just look at the message they exchanged about this.
So are you going for the 14-year-old?
Gonna go by first. I wanna get her high for it so she doesn't fight me. I love you. Soon we'll together.
But of course, Tyler was never satisfied. Now, he wanted Denali to violate and kill someone on camera. As Denali was considering her options, Tyler promised her $9 million. In Denali's dark and twisted mind, this could mean the end of her working life. She would never have to get a job. She would just kill someone and elope to another country where she could spend her newly made money and live like a queen. So, who could she kill easily? That's when her best friend Cynthia came to mind. But Denali realized she couldn't carry out her gruesome plan on her own. She needed a team, so she recruited 4 teenage boys: Caden McIntosh, Caleb Leyland, and 2 other boys who remained unnamed due to their very young ages. Denali had promised each of the boys $500,000 for their role in the murder. So on June 2nd, Denali, Caden, and Caleb picked up Cynthia, and they all smoked together. Then they drove to the Thunderbird Falls hiking trail for a short, fun hike. But the hike was only a lure. They took another trail to an isolated spot. There, Denali suggested they all duct taped each other and took photos for a laugh. Poor Cynthia had no idea what the other 3 had planned, and when she figured it out, it was too late. As Cynthia cried, screamed, and threatened to call the police, Denali pulled out her gun. She pointed it at Cynthia's head, but in the end, it was Caden that took the gun and ended Cynthia in the back of her head. Then they kicked her body into the river. During the police interrogation, Caden claimed he blacked out during most of the incident, but he did confess to shooting and pushing her into the water. Denali was much less cooperative with the police. However, she didn't know they already had all the necessary evidence on her phone. She had filmed the whole ordeal and sent it to her online boyfriend, Tyler, via Snapchat. Creepily enough, Tyler had wanted to see Cynthia violated too, but according to the forensic pathologist, Cynthia was not sexually assaulted that day. When the police cornered her with this information, Denali then said she was afraid of Caden and felt pressured into committing murder with him. But that was not true, and everyone knew this. It was Tyler who had asked for a filmed murder, and Denali had agreed. In fact, she was the one who came up with the plan and who had recruited the boys. Denali's chats with Tyler were graphic, to say the least. She showed sadistic behavior and an extremely dark mind for anyone, let alone a teenage girl. After killing Cynthia, the group worked all day to dispose of the evidence, burning Cynthia's possessions and texting Timothy under the fake name Angela. Here's another dark plot twist. There was never a Tyler either. His real name was Darren Shillmiller, and he was a 21-year-old man from Indiana. Of course, he wasn't a millionaire either, and he never planned to send Denali money for the murder. This was all a sick game to him, and Cynthia paid the ultimate price for his satisfaction. It wasn't long before the police discovered this and arrested Darren. When they did, he was more than eager to confess. He told them all about his creepy relationship with Denali and even said they had planned another murder after Cynthia. Darren had a long history of fake social media profiles and catfishing young girls into sending him inappropriate pictures.
As a mother, it scares me to think someone was living down the road with those kind of intentions. It gives me chills up my spine.
Darren had been a monster for most of his life. He was already under investigation for child content in his late teens, but after Denali killed her best friend, she posted one last Snapchat showing remorse.
I just want to thank everyone that's been there for me my whole life and these past few years and everything. I effed up. I know I did. If I could take back what I've done, I can't.
In front of a judge, she said the same thing.
I know what I did was wrong, and no, I could have probably done something different if I was able to.
Denali and the 4 teenagers were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, second-degree murder, and tampering with evidence. Denali and Darren were also charged with conspiracy to produce child content, abuse of a minor, and assault. Darren was also charged with the coercion and enticement of a minor. Cynthia was his ultimate victim, but Denali was also his victim. He had catfished her into killing her best friend. Here's a final dark catch. Denali was a mother herself. She and her 4 sisters grew up in the worst home imaginable. They had all been removed from their mother's care at different points, and once there was a 6th sister, but she was killed by the man living with their mother. Denali had known nothing but abuse, violence, and death her whole life. Cynthia has yet to receive justice, and her family has yet to get any kind of closure after her horrible death.
But I ain't gonna stop coming until everybody hears my cry.
What do you think Denali and the other sentences should be? Let me know with a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe.